Hiya, it's Stephen here, and welcome to Opinion Nation, where I bombard you with my opinion and you share yours. Now, today I was going to do a video mostly on the election, and I've been waiting for it to be sorted out, basically, because obviously there's still ongoing negotiations and stuff like that. But obviously, everyone would have heard in the interim there's been that terrible fire at I think it's the Grenfell tower. So I thought I would do this video addressing some of that, as well as a bit about the election, because essentially the unfortunate thing is that, like always, these sort of things get politicised. So my opinion is generally, life is crap and the media is a steaming pile of horse manure, and not worthy of my rose garden. The reason for this, I hate the media and the way they do things. This tragedy in West London with the Grenfell Tower is absolutely horrific, and my thoughts and best wishes, I suppose, it's only words, go out to those that have been affected and who have lost loved ones. We don't know yet even how many people have died. It could be in the tens, it could be over 100. It's absolutely terrible. I can't think of anything worse. Initially, the media coverage, obviously, of the incident was, as you would expect, showing what was happening and that sort of thing. But straight away, they started talking about what caused it, and then saying things like, no one's willing to give answers. The fire wasn't even out. How can anyone give answers? We're not going to even know the truth for months to come, and yet the media is already sprouting things as if they're fact. Obviously, there's a bit of anger as well, because theoretically this sort of incident could have been prevented. But yesterday the media was saying that there's a bit of anger, and they kept on saying this, and I believe that a lot of this is being whipped up by the media. They're whipping up people's emotions. They're on the scene, constantly asking questions. I mean, the one person I heard actually asked, "Aren't you angry?" I mean, that's prompting people. It's making people angry. Let them at least get over the incident and grieve, or whatever they need to do. Obviously, Jeremy Corbyn jumped right in and was one of the first to respond with all his supposed empathy. But that's just a load of politics. And again, the media covered that, saying, "Oh, he was the first, where's everyone else?" Right? Again, whipping up stupid feelings and sentiments. What they should be saying is that, why is Jeremy Corbyn using this to get brownie points? The other thing that I noticed that happened was the Prime Minister visited the scene yesterday, only for 15 minutes. When she was there, the media said she's visiting now, but she hasn't met with the residents. Just that one line. Today, it's the Prime Minister's criticised for not meeting the residents. They whipped up that story again. Now, whilst I agree this is a terrible incident and the Prime Minister is the Prime Minister, she's running a country. She can't spend hours on end talking to disaster victims. I mean, I know that sounds harsh, but it's true. Jeremy Corbyn can. He's not running a country. But at least she went there to look at the place herself. She talked to the emergency services, who are the people that need assistance now in order to make sure the building is safe, make sure the fires are out, and actually find and identify the bodies. They have got an absolutely awful job now. I mean, I can't imagine what it must be like to have to go through that building and find people. So, I think it's good that she bothered to go down, and people shouldn't be criticising her for the fact that she went down. Why do they always look for the negative? Now, I'm not saying that Theresa May and the Conservatives are particularly good. But in my view, as far as the election goes, I think they were the lesser of two evils, and I'll get onto that later. But, you know, she is a human being. I'm sure she feels very similar to most people, but she's a very busy lady. And I'm sure that behind the scenes, she's got lots of people working on it. I mean, if anybody needs to be criticised who's got time to do that, are the royals. I mean, they don't run a country. They're essentially ambassadors and doing various things. They could have been there. You know, so, but why criticise anybody? Why look at the negative all the time? It should be a good headline. The Prime Minister visited the scene today and talked to people, the emergency services, to make sure they had everything they need. Then finish it. Don't just say, but she's facing criticism. They're making a story. They're making people's emotions. Especially at this time, the media is whipping it up just so that they've got something to report. And that's why I hate it, because they make these situations far worse than they need to be. They cause people pain by whipping up unnecessary emotions when they don't need to be angry at this time. They need to be cool-headed so they can sort out their lives, not listen to the media. And the media does this all the time. It annoys me immensely. It's like with the elections, they did the same thing. But I do believe that someone should be held accountable to this. The building codes in this country are, as far as I'm concerned, very strict in comparison to other countries, particularly in the third world. You may or may not know, I spent a number of years in South Africa. So the building codes in comparison to South Africa are far more stringent in this country. But you can't, it doesn't matter what you do, accidents and things can still happen. But I think if the building codes were stuck to, this probably might not have been as bad as it got. So if someone has skimped on any laws or regulations, someone has to be held accountable. But it's not the Prime Minister who can be held accountable. It's not even, the government per se. They're the ones that put in the laws. They can't monitor it. It's the people that are monitoring it. Now, that's supposed to be council housing. So essentially, the council is responsible for it, whoever the council might be. And whoever the council appointed to look after that building is even more responsible, because obviously the council's got far too much to do than individually look. So they appoint housing associations or whatever it is. I don't quite know how it works, but that's irrelevant. Someone is responsible for that particular building. They would have been responsible for whoever renovated that building. Now, if the renovations are the cause of it, then the person responsible, or the organisation responsible for looking after that building, and the company responsible for doing the renovations incorrectly, if that's the case, should be held accountable. And someone must be held accountable. Right, if the laws have been broken. If the laws and regulations haven't been, and everything's been complied with, then we need to look at it again. Right, because this is not something that you can foresee totally. So, we need to look at, it might just be that particularly old buildings need to be either looked at individually and made fire safe, or as far as I'm concerned, these old buildings should in fact be knocked down and some other type of housing put up that complies with everything. Because, I mean, this building, I'm sure it's been up since the 70s. Now, obviously in the 70s, when the original building was built, they would have had different fire regulations. But since then, there's been renovations and stuff on it. They talk a lot about the cladding on the outside. I think it's a little early to jump to full conclusions, but it is probable that it is the cladding when you listen to some of the professionals. And basically what that means is the owner or whoever's responsible for the building just wanted to make it look nice for the community. and not actually caring about the people inside. And therefore they must be held responsible if that's the case, because they spent something like £9 million doing it. They should have spent that £9 million making fire escapes or something like that. I mean, as of talking at this moment, I think about 17 people are confirmed dead, but there's possibly up to 100 missing. And, you know, if they haven't been in contact with someone by now, I think it's very probable that they have passed away. I mean, it's possible that even entire families have, because of the time it was at night and that sort of thing. I personally think what started the fire was probably something to do with gas. I mean, there was a thing about an exploding fridge. That doesn't happen very often, but if it was that, then maybe it ignited a gas main. It's just because some of those flames looked like they were fueled by something. And if it was gas mains, that might explain why it spread so quickly. And it is possible that they weren't up to scratch, because they were probably installed in the 70s. So, but again, we're not going to know the full story for weeks, maybe months to come, because it's a huge building. You know, I think 120 flats or something. But there were things that conspired against it. The fact is that the fire started on the lower floors. I mean, I've heard stories of it either on the second or fourth floor. You know, it's very difficult to tell. But either way, it started lower down, and unfortunately fire burns upwards. And with like the double glazing and stuff that probably was in there, some of it might have been old and susceptible to fire. You know, it was just a conspiracy. And also the hot weather, the dry weather, you know, all that sort of thing conspired against the building. You know, it's a terrible tragedy, but it is too soon to start pointing fingers, and too soon for the media to start making up emotions out of people just so that they've got something to report. And I think it's sick that they do that. I think it's even worse that political parties use it for brownie points, like Labour and Jeremy Corbyn. At least Theresa May has just said, you know, given her condolences and getting on with her normal job. You know, it just annoys me that that's happening. Now, obviously, probably a lot of people in that building were Labour supporters, so you could understand that. The Mayor of London is Labour, but that's an interesting point. People don't seem to be pointing many fingers at him, and he's the Mayor of London. Of course, what they say is, oh, well, this would have been done when the Conservatives were Mayor of London. That's not the point. The point is, he took over as Mayor of London. He could have perhaps, as he's Labour and all into social things and social housing, perhaps he should have done something a bit sooner and looked into it. We can point fingers at all sorts of people. But the media decides to point fingers at specific people because they manipulate people's feelings. Anyway, I'm going to end now on that particular subject. It is terrible, absolutely awful. My thoughts and feelings go out to all those affected. I'm sure that the government will make sure that the survivors are well housed, and the spirit and community spirit that the London has shown has just proved, when you look at it on that face value, that humanity is still alive. There are good people out there, and it's good to see that the whole community, whatever your race, colour, creed, religion, work together. Christians, Jews, Muslims, it doesn't matter who you are. They work together for the common goal, because that building would have had people of every faith, of every race. And everyone, when it comes down to life and death, it doesn't matter. You all suffer the same. You're all flesh and blood. So, my condolences at this terrible time, and I do hope that it never happens again. Now, with that said, I'm going to do a little bit about the election. I I've been waiting to see if there is some sort of agreement made with the DUP. I might do an update of this later. But firstly, again, the media whips up rubbish about the election. Now, it was a hung parliament, per se. But let us not lose the face of the fact. The Conservatives won. They're making it out as if Labour won. Labour didn't win. They got a few more seats, but they still didn't win. This is what, the third election that they have lost. What is that saying? Now, the only reason they won was because of the low turnout of voters. Because basically, people are getting sick and tired of voting for things. They want people just to get on with it. The problem being is the people that turned up to vote voted Labour, instead of actually looking at the situation properly and saying, well, we need to have a stable government. The leader of the Labour Party is not experienced in government, so let's keep the government we've got so that they can get on with Brexit. Essentially, yes, that's what the votes told. But what actually happened is that enough was there to weaken the government's thing, and I believe Jeremy Corbyn is going to do everything he possibly can to stifle the government with its Brexit negotiations and stuff like that. And that is not thinking about the country, that's thinking about himself and his party. And that is wrong. What should happen is all parties, perhaps, should come together at this time and say, let's all work together to get the best deal for Britain, instead of trying to poo-poo what the government's trying to do. It's ridiculous. But of course, party politics takes precedence over actual running of the country. And the Conservatives are just as guilty. That's the problem that I have. I mean, the reason she called this election, technically speaking, was in order to get a stronger majority so that she could pass things through Parliament. But it was also just to see if we could grab a few more seats. Right? So all that cost and stuff was totally unnecessary. She could have had a week of negotiations by now instead of the elections. So, you know, she didn't need to call it. But of course, when the election was called, clearly the media, to the large majority, at least on the television, were Labour supporters, because they were constantly playing anything that Theresa May did and upplaying anything that Corbyn did. The unfortunate thing that also happened around that time is that there was that terrorist attack or those terrorist attacks, you know, in Birmingham and, not Birmingham, Manchester and London. And obviously that has an effect, because the media points fingers and say, well, you're not doing enough. Well, in view of those terrorist attacks, which I'm going to probably do a video on as well, there's not a lot you can do to prevent it without actually infringing on civil liberties. Now, if the government dared to do that, the media would be saying, oh, you're infringing on civil liberties. You know, they can't win, and it is so destructive for the country. We need a unified country. We need parties to work together, or at least one party that can actually take the good bits of all the parties into one. Because there are some good stuff in Labour, and there are some good stuff in Conservatives. Even the Liberal Democrats have a few policies that make sense. But as far as I am concerned with regards to the election, the Conservatives were the best choice, only because they're already in government, and because, you know, they've got the experience. They have helped the economy as a whole. Yes, people are still struggling, you know, work-wise and that sort of thing, although I believe the number of unemployed has gone down. But one thing you can say in this country, as opposed to third world countries, is most people will not starve. You do still have job seekers, ESA, social housing, that sort of thing. Perhaps not as good or as much as it could be under Labour, but at least it's there. No one's going to starve, and no one's going to not have a roof over their head in this country. So, you know, that's one thing, and the Conservatives are still doing it. The thing is, though, you've got to be reasonable. You've got to realise that money is not there. If you spend all the money on social services now, then people of my generation, and even the younger generation than me, are not going to have social services when they get old. They probably won't get a pension, or at least very little. You've got to look at it this way. We have not a generation, but a population that's actually, to a large degree, getting older. So, you know, you've got to save money, especially now with Brexit, because it is, no matter how you play it, it is going to cause a bit of upset. I do believe that the economy might slow down a bit because of it for a while, but if people, how shall I put it, take advantage of some of the advantages, perhaps with trade with the Commonwealth or something, it would be much better. Again, I'm going to do a Brexit video separate on that. But my main point is that this election was a win for the Conservatives. We need to look at it that way. It was not representative of the entire country. Of the vote, the Conservatives, percentage-wise, won far more than 50%. If it was done on proportional representation, they would be the majority party. But people don't mention that. I mean, the way that our democracy runs at the moment is, as far as I'm concerned, up to crap. You know, because it doesn't represent properly. If they got the percentage of the vote, they would have been powerful in Parliament. So, you know, that's that. As far as the negotiations with the DUP, yes, it's a little bit unorthodox, you know, being a Northern Ireland party. I am surprised. I would have thought that perhaps the Liberal Democrats might have stepped up to the plate or something. I don't know. That's what I would have thought. But again, people are pointing fingers and that sort of thing. It doesn't matter that they're from Northern Ireland. The peace process or whatever they're going on there is a separate issue. If they help get the government stable so we can do what we need to do with Brexit and get what we need to get, the best deal, then who cares if they are the DUP? They're not going to shove down their policies because they're not big enough to force the Conservatives to do anything. But they are good enough to help the Conservatives get through the necessary stuff for the economy and Brexit, because they also want to have a good deal for Northern Ireland. So I think, in a way, it's good that they're working. At least someone's working together, willing to talk. Not like Labour, who's basically not willing to talk and wants to stop any coalition or something like that and create an unstable government, possibly create another election, which is just, people are so tired. So, in conclusion on this, I'm going to do another video again on this when we know a bit more about what's going on. But I think we need to stop listening to the media because they spout a load of crap. Make your own opinion. Form your own opinion. Look at things logically, not under the logic that's bombarding you from the radio and television and the papers. Your own logic, and see. You'll then see what the real picture is. For now, I think we need to accept the fact that the Conservatives won again, and that we need to get on with the job. We need to move ahead and get on with it. Enough now of this party politics. Enough from everybody, Conservatives, Labour, whoever it is. Stop it. We don't want any more elections. The people are sick of politics. They want things to be sorted. They want this Brexit crap over with, and they want to start to live without all of this rubbish hanging over their head. I believe that this country is a great country. I believe that if we work together as one, including the political parties, we can actually make this country into something that's worthy of its name, you know, something that makes it worthy of the name Great Britain. We have got to work together, we have got to take the rough and the smooth, and we've got to grab opportunities when they arrive with regards to Brexit and move forward. Get on with the job. Stop talking about it. Just do it. And the media needs to leave them alone and let them get on with it and stop trying to make stories and whip up stupid emotions just so that they've got something to report. So that is my general opinion on some of the latest things that have been happening. Whether you agree with it or not is, well, I don't have an opinion on that. It's your opinion, and you can share your opinion if you want. I am known for changing my opinions if people show me that they're wrong, but it's been a very generalized video. But I believe deep down that most people probably are of a similar opinion, whether they're Labour, Conservative or whatever. They just want to get on with the job. And as far as that terrible disaster, let's sort out the victims first before we start pointing fingers. Let's get the investigation under the way. Let's see it finished before we come to conclusions. So, that I think is where I'm going to end it for today. I'm not sure when this video is going to get up because my man that normally does it isn't here at the moment, but hopefully it won't be too long. I thank you for taking the time, and you can obviously leave comments below, and if you want to subscribe you can. But this is me signing off from the Opinion Nation. See ya.